first of all, one of the main decisions to make is what's the level of ambition of the company. For example, is AI in some industries very disruptive or not? Or is it just an efficiency game? And that has to be assessed because, for example, in the case of disruption, then the ambition has to be a lot higher. So setting the ambition level for the CEO and for the company is critical from the boards. That's the first element. Second, of course, the AI strategy of the company has to align with that. And of course, when we say an AI strategy, that can mean many things. One of the key elements of an AI strategy is where do you put your resources? Do you put your resources on capabilities like data and infrastructure and skills? Do you put your resources on quick wins, on process efficiency, on product improvements, or on experimentation, on doing kind of blue sky kind of experiments to create potential disruptions? How do you balance your portfolio? That depends a lot and has to be aligned with the ambition level and the impact of AI on the industry and, of course, on the company. Third, then we'll go always to the space of how fast do you move? Because moving fast may have an impact on the culture of the company. People are sometimes worried about what it means for their jobs or for their lives, or for change is always difficult. So the speed has to be kind of balanced continuously with the readiness of the company to adjust. And finally, last but not least, AI, unlike any other technology, the moment you deploy it, you have, in a sense, automated certain behaviors and decision-making capabilities. And behaviors and decision-making capabilities come with values. So, for example, there are then trade-offs between different types of values. For example, how much do we trade between, let's say, privacy versus security, right? How much do we trade between, let's say, safety and robustness versus trust sometimes? Because sometimes, we can create a sense of trust, but not necessarily having the appropriate safety on the background. So there are all sorts of trade-offs of values. And of course, the values that matter for one company are not necessarily the same as for another company. To begin with, boards have to understand the readiness of the organization, the AI readiness. Now, readiness have multiple dimensions. And the way to think about this, or one way to think about this, is by thinking about the main enablers of AI. Now, there are commonly three core buckets of enablers. First is data. So how is the data availability, the data quality, the data provenance understanding on the one hand, and the richness of the data? Do we have a data strategy in place? Do we have a data governance in place? How mature is a company in terms of its data capabilities? Second is infrastructure and compute. How is the IT and how is the infrastructure? Are the systems standardized, integrated, which of course relates also to how data are flowing from, let's say, one silo to another silo, from one business unit to the next business unit. And finally, beyond data and infrastructure, the third capability that enables AI transformations and enables AI adoption is talent. How is our talent today? Do we need to hire new talent? Do we need to upskill people? What are we missing? What are our gaps? So do some kind of gap assessment between where we are and where we need to be in order to deliver the successful AI transformation and adoption. One of the biggest challenges boards face with AI in some industries, not in all of them, and in some companies, of course, is again the risk of disruption by AI. How will AI impact the balance of power, if you like, and the power of the company within its industry and across industries, right? Potentially, how could AI disrupt completely the business model or change the business model, the value proposition and the business model of the company? So understanding how to balance short-term gains, doing better what we do now with longer-term disruption and potential innovation possibilities is a very difficult balance. It's a very difficult balance in general for short-term and long-term, so more so with AI where things move fast and can be disrupted relatively quickly. Another factor is, of course, human factors, and there are multiple elements there. One element has to do with the readiness of the workforce. The other element is, of course, the usual change management capabilities. And of course, there are elements around, let's say, political issues, not or political power in the organization. So when one implements an AI strategy and an AI transformation, one has to always pay attention where power lies, because that can become an impediment. So considering these factors is very important. Finally, a dimension that becomes more and more pronounced recently is what one can call broadly, although it's a term used mostly for national, but can also be for company, sovereignty. Or in a sense, being in control of your infrastructure, being in control of your AI stack being the technology stack, from the networks and the chips and the IT you are using, all the way to the large language models you are using, data, etc., and the systems you are using. So how do you keep control as much as possible of your stack and also follow evolutions and innovations in the stack across the AI ecosystem? This question is becoming increasingly important, both at the national level, but of course for global companies who operate in lots of different countries. There is a concept which one can call it AI governance, which is, in a sense, in addition to, of course, the corporate governance and other forms of governance, regulation, etc., etc. So how can one think about AI governance? In a nutshell, one can think of it as different buckets that have to be defined. And every company has to have its own AI governance blueprint. Starts with principles. What values and what principles mostly matter when it comes to AI? Is it, again, something around safety for cars, safety for medical devices, discrimination, fairness for banks, privacy in some applications? What are the main principles and what are the main trade-offs? And again, this depends on the company. Next, you go into policies of using AI. Who can use when and how AI? Do we have to always communicate that there is AI used and how? What are the policies for using AI in the organization, both internally and towards the customers, of course. And of course, those policies have to be aligned with the principles. Then there is a question of roles. Who has what role? Is it under legal? What's legal's role? What's the product role? What's the CXO role? What's the CTO role in general, specifically in this case? What are the roles of the different players in the organization to ensure that the principles and the policies are implemented? Then you have to make sure that there are processes in place. For example, two very critical processes is what one calls monitoring of AI systems. Do have the right monitoring processes in place to ensure that AI behaves according to the principles and the policies we decided. In addition to principles, policies, roles, processes, of course, you need tools and technology to support all of those things. Banks, by the way, have been using some of those elements for many years now. In many ways, if you think about this, AI risk management is related to model risk management, where the AI is basically what in banks people call it a model. But of course, governance is more than just risk management. It's also enabling the organization to create an upside. It's not only about managing the downside, it's also managing the upside. AI literacy, broadly defined, is a concept that sometimes is misunderstood. In a narrow sense, people consider AI literacy to be about knowing certain tools. In a bit broader sense, people consider AI literacy to be about understanding where value can be created with AI. I believe that AI literacy is a much broader concept. And I always use in my executive courses and in my MBA teaching a very simple framework that has all sorts of different layers that indicate what one needs to know and understand a bit about in order to understand the bigger picture. So, for example, of course, inside there you have issues around, you have to understand elements around the technology itself and the tools themselves. But you also want to understand a little bit about the science behind AI in order to be able to better appreciate what are the technical behaviors of AI and where they're coming from, and having more clarity on that. But then you also have to understand how AI impacts an organization, how AI impacts people's thinking, people's way of thinking, people's way of working. So you have to also understand, of course, AI, the elements around data, because AI and data relate a lot. So you have to understand what are innovations, what's happening in the space of data architecture, data governance, data technologies. And then you also have to understand the bigger picture, regulations, and even national strategies, especially if you are operating in different jurisdictions in different countries, of course. You have to understand how the national strategies may be playing with, maybe interacting with your operations and your strategy across different geographies. And finally, an element that's becoming very, very important these days is, of course, the geopolitical landscape and how this relates to sovereignty questions and questions about how you choose your technology and AI stack. Now, having said this, keeping up to date with all of those things is more important than keeping very much up to date with only one of them. So it's about a little bit of awareness and following across many different topics, and less about a lot of awareness and following on one topic. Now, having said this, the tool side is also very important. So it's always useful if board members and executives spend some time also themselves playing around with AI to get a very proper hands-on feeling about what one can do with this.